Welcome to Stories from the Field, our Annie Armstrong edition. As you know from this morning, our guest this evening is Rob Wilton, who's a church planner with the North American Mission Board. He's with Vintage Church. Actually has a couple of locations, but he's located up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where it seems like that the weather that we're having right now in Jackson is the weather that he's probably used to in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As you can tell, I'm filming this not from the office. I'm actually in my house because of the winter storm that we've been under. So, Rob, man, you're used to this. So, listen, we want to give you a nice, cool Mississippi welcome.
Thank you so much.
As you join us by Zoom. So, thank you so much.
I've heard from quite a few of my friends in Texas and Mississippi, and there was Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and they had on big coats and all this stuff, and they've all admitted two things, Pastor. Number one, that they're going to pray for me now more than ever because they know now what I'm experiencing. And number two, they definitely are going to feel sorry for me more than ever. So.
we definitely have a new appreciation of the cold weather in the Northeast.
For sure.
Listen, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Let's just kind of begin. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family.
Yeah, so I love sharing as part of my story a little bit about my heritage. There was probably a season in my life where, as a church planter, you'll find out I kind of like doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't typically like following. I like starting and launching and taking new ground. And the Lord really convicted me of that, and then also just showed me how much of a blessing it is to have such a Christian heritage in my life. My heritage goes all the way back to South Africa. My whole family is from South Africa. I'm the firstborn in my family in America. My parents, in the late 70s, there was a Mississippi preacher from Columbia, Mississippi, who came and preached a revival in my parents' church in South Africa. And at that time, my parents were in education, but they were praying about full-time ministry. And both of them had grown up in homes with pastors. Both of my grandfathers are preachers. And so this Mississippi preacher preached. God used this preacher. They come down, respond, tell this preacher, hey, God's calling us in a full-time ministry. He said, I know exactly where you need to go. And they basically told my parents about the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. And within months, my parents sold all their possessions, and in 1979, moved to New Orleans. The only thing my dad says that he knew about New Orleans was Huckleberry Finn. That was about it. And so I was born 2 years later, grew up on that campus. My dad became professor of evangelism, started preaching with the Billy Graham Association. So I grew up around revivals, and I'm pretty sure my dad at one time probably preached at First Baptist Jackson. I can't find a church that he didn't preach at some point in the 80s and 90s. But I grew up in that, and that was when the Lord saved me. At the age of 7, my dad preached a revival at the East Edgewater Baptist Church. My dad preached a sermon. Pastor, with all due respect, you know this, but revival preachers back in the day only had 5 sermons. And my dad was on his Sunday night sermon that I had heard a million times, but the Spirit of God got a hold of me that night, and I responded, and I trusted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Well, fast forward, in my teenage years, my dad accepted the call to First Baptist Church of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so in high school, I got discipled in a local church context, fell in love with that, went into college, played college basketball, and honestly was headed towards a sports career. And after serving in a sports camp that Southern Baptist used to have called Crosspoint, the Lord got a hold of my life and called me into full-time ministry. He told me to throw down my nets and follow him. Well, I had one deal with him. I said, all right, Lord, I'll go into ministry, but I'm never going to go back to New Orleans, right? And isn't it funny when we tell the Lord that? And
that's right.
The Lord called my wife and I. My wife and I, Annabeth, we've been married 15 years now. She was my high school sweetheart. We got married, answered the call of God, and I started coming to New Orleans Baptist Seminary working for Upward Sports. That was before Katrina Had the
Yeah.
privilege of serving as Dr. David Platt's assistant for about a year when he was the dean of chapel. And then everybody knows Katrina hit. And that honestly affirmed my call to the city of New Orleans. I had at that point just wanted to get, a degree and then hopefully serve the Lord in ministry somewhere. But Hurricane Katrina was the thing that actually tugged at my heart and called me into the city. So I returned back, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Mission Lab program at the Baptist Seminary there.
Sure.
But I ran that program as their director for about 6-7 years and helped to rebuild the city, host mission teams, church faith-based groups coming in. Through that, my wife is a massage therapist, and it's awesome being married to a massage therapist, just to let you know. We got really some cool relationships that started to form in the city, right there in the Garden District. And over food one night, we led one of my wife's coworkers to the Lord. And that conversion, that salvation called us off the seminary campus into the heart of Uptown, and we planted Vintage Church in 2008. And so, man, God just did some amazing things. Fast forward a long story, and I can share more about my time in New Orleans. I know I'm in Pittsburgh now, but in 8 years, Pastor, we moved 13 different locations.
Oh my goodness!
And so the name of our church was Vintage Church, but our slogan was we're a cool church if you can find us. That was our slogan. And we eventually merged with the church. They had a building, no people. We had people, no building. It was Highland Baptist Church. We did a big renovation project. And then I'm telling you, I've got, for the first time in my life, an office. I had a green room. I mean, I'm telling you, I had staff. My wife and I had bought a house a year and a half before that. We had everything we had worked so hard for. And I just wrapped up my doctoral studies at Southern Seminary from a distance in church planting, my doctorate of ministry. And the Lord was stirring my heart. And the moment we opened that building, the Lord released me and told me that my assignment there was done. It took me 2 months to tell my wife because we were so settled and so happy in New Orleans. I had also had the privilege of serving as the New Orleans Saints chaplain and had been that for quite a few years. And so we had a good gig. But as my grandpa told me years ago, God's call trumps all. And we started to open up our hands. I almost went to a church in Orlando to do a revitalization, downtown Baptist Orlando, and things just didn't work out. But that was the thing that put me on the North American Mission Board's radar. And so I can talk more about that, but over a conversation with Kevin Ezell, he was like, Rob, we don't want you to go to Orlando. We love Orlando, but we want you to pray about going somewhere. And I said, well, where, Kevin? He said, man, I want you to pray about Pittsburgh. And I'm just going to be honest. This came out of my mouth. I said, that sounds awful. I don't know if that's going to work out for me. And he said, don't knock it till you try it. We took a trip, and God does what he does. And we've been here now for 2.5 years.
Man, I love how your story actually begins with a pastor in Mississippi. That's just an incredible time.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, that's the world comes from Mississippi. It's awesome to see how God works, and you never know. You never know how God's going to work in somebody's life and the ripple effect that goes from generation to generation. Right. When I was a student at New Orleans Seminary, I had the opportunity to hear your dad preach several times, and boy, it's just an incredible man of God. And I know you have a great heritage. And it's so exciting to hear.
That's him behind me right there. That's me, my brother, and my dad. My dad's got the hat on, and we got this big old fish on the coast of South Carolina right there.
Oh, just so incredible. What a great heritage. And so I do want to touch on one thing real quickly. I know people will be really interested in this. You mentioned it, being a chaplain with the New Orleans Saints. Yeah. Here in Mississippi, this is Saints country, man. We love Drew Brees. We love the Saints. I mean, this is, it's big here. And so just quickly, and I don't want to take all our time doing this, but what was it like being a chaplain with the Saints?
Yeah, so I've actually this year I kind of wrapped up. I think I'm pretty sure nobody knows yet,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty close with Mr. Breeze, but I'm pretty
Mm,
sure this is it for him. For the
yeah.
last 2-3 years since I've been in Pittsburgh, he loves his routine, and I've actually been his routine for 11 years. And
Mm,
so, from a distance, a little bit on Zoom this past season because of COVID restrictions, I've
yeah.
actually stayed engaged, and I've raised up somebody that's going to be the future chaplain there. But
Oh,
it became an amazing blessing in our lives. We had some of the players come and visit our church some 11 years ago. Our church was only about 2 years old, and they came on a Sunday, and they invited me to come and speak at a couple chapels during the season. And really, the rest is history. They just kept inviting me back, and every
mm,
year, Coach Payton was kind and gracious enough to give me more access and to be around the guys. And
yeah.
it's very similar. The ministry is very similar to a pastorate. Like
Yeah.
nobody's forced to do anything. It's just all about shepherding, loving people. We've gone in on the gospel and had some incredible salvations and baptisms over the years, but I've
Wow.
really got some lifelong friends that have been in the NFL over the last 11 seasons, one of which is the Breeze family, and just
Yeah.
been super thankful. I always knew God opened up that door because everyone in our city and in our region was watching them. And
Yeah. Right.
even though nobody would even really know much about it, the more I can motivate those guys to use their platform for the gospel,
Yeah.
I knew that that was my purpose, and I was just super thankful to be a part of that ride.
Wow. No question. And now you're in the middle of Pittsburgh Steelers country, right? So,
Here's a funny thing, and people give me a hard time all the time, but I've
yeah.
actually used this missionally. So this is talking about contextualization and how you connect in a new city, right? I've moved
Yeah.
in, it's a different
Yeah.
language. I mean, these people up here, they don't know how to eat. They don't know what hot sauce is. Like there's a lot of things, but I've stuck with my Saints colors.
Yeah. Good
I'm
for you.
definitely respectful for the Steeler Nation,
Yeah.
but it has kind of become my thing. I wear my Saints stuff everywhere because immediately here in Pittsburgh, New Orleans used the term rebirth post Katrina.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Post the steel industry crash in Pittsburgh, they used the term renaissance.
Huh.
And so there is a new openness in Pittsburgh to outsiders coming in like there has never been.
How about that?
And that presents an incredible opportunity. Here's a quote from the mayor of the city. He said, "The bond between Pittsburgh and its people is stronger than steel, but we always have room for one more neighbor."
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And because this is where Mr. Rogers' neighborhood is, and so
I
he's
didn't
kind of
know that.
playing off of that. And
Yeah.
so I wear my Saint stuff everywhere, and I'm staying strong with the Houdat Nation, yelling Houdat to all my neighbors. Man, they hosed me all season. I had, Steelers stuff showing up on my driveway, on my door. It's kind of been a fun thing, and this is what I've learned. Number one, I always get to tell my story. So people are kind of mesmerized that a Saints fan's up here. What are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them. Secondly, I've learned that I've actually become adopted by people of Pittsburgh as an outsider. As long as you show one that is interested to learn about their city,
right?
Stay true to who you are. They don't want fake. They want real.
Yeah.
Man, they've kind of adopted me, and they've said, "Hey, I want to show you my favorite restaurant. Hey, let me take you to this place. Hey, let me tell you about this history." And it's really been a cool way for me. I like viewing myself, pastor, more of as a missionary than a church planner, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I love stepping into this new context and figuring out how to get the gospel to the Steeler Nation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know, there's differences in ministry wherever you go. I served for 10 years in Biloxi. And so Gulf Coast is a little bit more similar to New Orleans than, say, Jackson is. And so there's differences in the way you do ministry on the Gulf Coast or New Orleans than you would in a place like Central Mississippi and Jackson. I can only imagine, though, the difference between New Orleans and Pittsburgh.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about some of the the differences that you've had to encounter and try to learn there in the Northeast?
Yeah, so I think there are some commonalities no matter where you go. I think
Absolutely.
a lot of
Yeah.
times we overcomplicate how we contextualize the gospel. We get a little
Yeah.
too cute, right?
Absolutely.
The simple gospel message saves any people, anywhere, anytime, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to just be simple and then fulfill the Great Commission by loving God and loving people. But context does matter.
Yeah.
And there is language that you have to learn. I think what's really important for church planners is I've had the privilege through the North American Mission Board to also coach church planters, is one of the things you have to really discover are the idols in a city.
Yeah.
And you have to gospel those idols. You have to understand the heritage in the city. I found out really quickly in the city of Pittsburgh, although we have not seen an abundance of Southern Baptist work across Pittsburgh, there has been a powerful gospel movement in the city of Pittsburgh. And so we have 2 locations as a church. God, that's a whole crazy story of how God even put us into that, really through a couple different opportunities with properties and churches folding as I came in with new leadership, people wanting some new leadership and vision. But one of our locations is in the city on top of Mount Washington. And I found out that 40 years ago, faithful men of God rallied on top of Mount Washington, praying this simple prayer, that Jesus Christ would be more famous than steel.
Wow.
That was before the steel crash. That was before the steel crash. And so I had to learn real quickly. I can't enter into this city and say, finally, I'm bringing Jesus to you guys. No, God's been doing some amazing things, and I'm standing on the shoulders of a legacy here. And so I've been very careful to honor the past here, to honor the heritage, but then to also, because New Orleans has that too, not just allow our traditions and our heritage to be our idol. Now, God wants to do something new, and God wants to, in a sense, continue to advance his mission, right? Through even church planning. And so, look, New Orleans has the idol of laissez bon temps rouler, right? Like they are just so chill down there. In Pittsburgh, there's an idol. They're workaholics.
Yeah.
And so people just work, and then they go to their basements in the evenings and drink away their sorrows. And so you recognize those things, the things that are similar, football towns like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is not just hard Northeast. It's a complex mix of Midwest influence,
Right.
a little bit of South, but more like the Virginia, Maryland type of South. And then you've got Northeast. Yeah. And so I found very quickly when I walked the streets of New Orleans, I got tougher faces, right?
Yeah.
But, and I'm overgeneralizing.
Yeah, sure.
The moment I say, hey, they're like, hey, baby, and I'm eating gumbo in their house, right? In Pittsburgh, they actually have a nice face.
Okay.
But it is hard to be invited in their house.
I have a friend, a real close friend, who's a church planner with North American Mission Board in Northwest.
Yeah.
And he made the comment to me, or I heard him make the comment through somebody else that I heard from them. But he was saying that in the South, if you want to plant a church, you rent out a movie theater, you rent out a building, you send mail outs out, and you tell everybody we're going to open church on Easter Sunday, whatever day of time. But he says here, in order to have a church, you have to be the church.
Wow.
And that was one of the big differences. I'm assuming the same is true where you are.
It's the exact same. And look, I'm an evangelist. I don't really hold back. Like I go after people and ask people to give their lives to Christ. I go fish, Yeah. And but I did come in here. This is me now learning 2.5 years. I came in a little too hot. And especially with my neighbors, I have fought for 2 years after coming in for the first 6 months too hot to more fight to show them the gospel than to just announce to them the gospel.
Yeah.
And so that be the church side of the mission is very true in the Northeast. You've got to walk your talk, and it takes time. And especially when you go to the generational Pittsburgher that is predominantly Catholic or religious, man, they're just not going to open up their door until you show you're part of their life and part of their society. And so that takes time, and that can be really frustrating. Part of what I do in helping church planters in the Northeast is just, stay in the game, man. Stay in the game and keep persevering. And to be honest, Pastor, through partnerships like this with you guys, this is how we do it. Like we need this encouragement. We need prayer. I know we're focusing on the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering, but this really is a lifeline for a lot of guys who are on the front lines, who need to be committed for 20 plus years in order for true gospel foundational ministry to make an impact into a community.
Yeah. Wow. That's all. And I love the way you say that. Basically saying you're playing the long game.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to realize that you're invested in what you're doing. You really believe what you preach, and you believe that God, part of helping people know that God loves them is loving them yourself. Yeah. And you can't, it's hard to do that when you're in and out. I mean, you've got to be there.
And God's answering our prayers. Like when we left New Orleans, that was the hardest thing I ever did. My kids, I've got 4 kids. Bolt is 12, my oldest. Yeah. I got twin boys that are 10, Mac and Burke. And then I got a daughter, McCall, who's 7. She's my favorite. It's not even close. So all my kids, especially my oldest, he really struggled leaving New Orleans. That was the only life he knew. Sure. And it's been so amazing. It kind of rips me up a little bit, gets me choked up. But multiple times, even over the last few months, he's expressed to me and his mama that he doesn't want to leave Pittsburgh. Like,
that's awesome. Man.
Loves it here. And that's the grace of God. Like only he could do that. Only he could open up their hearts. And those are the things we need to be praying for our church planters, not just the impact of their preaching and worship services. We need to pray for their families. Most of our guys are not making it because of their families. And we've got to ask for God to do a work in kids' hearts and our wives and the families. And he's done that here for us. And I'm just thankful. I really am.
Well, and I know that as we're in the season of Annie Armstrong Easter Offering, and people, we ask people to give to Annie Armstrong, and people are very gracious and they're generous to do so. Yeah. But oftentimes, we give that money, we write the check, we just don't think a whole lot about it.
Right.
But you've kind of given us a different perspective. I mean, part of that is holding the rope on the other end. Part of that is the encouragement that comes from knowing that you're not alone, that there are people who have your back. Right. And so talk to us quickly in the just a couple more minutes that we have. Yeah. Talk to us about the importance of the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering for church planters.
Well, I love the Send Network, and I'm all in. Yeah. Man, I've drank the Kool-Aid. I'm hooked. And it's mainly because of our visionary and leader, Kevin Ezell. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I've kind of worked directly with him here in Pittsburgh. I can't hardly get him to talk about church work or anything. Every time he calls me, he's like, how's the family? How's Annabeth, your wife? How are the kids? I mean, and that bleeds into everything he's trying to build within our network. And the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering, yes, goes towards the mission, but it also goes towards the supporting of our church planters to be on mission. Yeah. And that's so important, because what you do with the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering is you give towards the different things that we provide for church planters, like care, like coming alongside them with resources for their churches when they need it, like special events and outreaches. Because most church plants don't have the margin to even facilitate things like that. But then also, and I'm very proud to say this, during all the COVID cutbacks and restrictions, the North American Mission Board did not cut not one penny of church planter support. And I just think that's amazing. I really am thankful. And I know it's because of the generosity of Southern Baptists across our convention. But man, look, I had one pastor, I'm not trying to throw shade or whatever. We were within 2 weeks. He was panicking. I mean, COVID's only just started, and he calls me. He's like, hey, we're going to have to let this church planter know. We might not be able to keep supporting him. And I was like, no, like, find something else, because we're also having to make cuts in this season.
Yeah.
And to hear that some of our partners might not be there, man, the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering is just, it's that shot in the arm, encouragement. And at the end of the day, it's a reminder to all of us on the field that God is faithful.
Yeah.
That he's got this, that he's empowering us through the faithful generosity of churches all across the world.
Listen, Rob, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to help us. And yeah, we appreciate it a lot. And we want you to know the First Baptist Jackson's got your back. And so
thank you. Hey, listen, next time it's winter, I need to fly south. So please give me a reason. I'll go and lead the kids ministry on a Sunday. Just put me to work. I need to fly south.
That sounds great. We'd love to make that happen. And listen, church family, thank you so much for joining us tonight for this edition of Stories from the Field as we talk about the importance of the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering. Boys, what a great interview this has been with Rob. And I know that you've enjoyed hearing how God's at work in his life and in his family's life and through Vintage Church, and also helping other church planners with the North American Mission Board. And hopefully you've been able to see tonight the importance of the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering. As Rob talked about, it's important for church planners to see their work as the long game. And by supporting them through the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering, as well as we do each Sunday through the cooperative program, it helps people like Rob to be able to do the long game in the places where they are, to not be worried all the time about how they're going to have money for this or that, but to be able to focus on the work that God has called them to do. It's a way for you and me to be a part of how God's at work in Pittsburgh, as well as around all of North America. So we really encourage you to give to the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering. I know life has been challenging and there's just a lot of things on your plate, but boy, it is important to remember, God's call for us to be a part of making disciples all around the world. And so through your Annie Armstrong Easter Offering really goes a long way in helping people like Rob and other church planners do that. So thank you again for joining us tonight for Stories from the Field. Hope you have a great week.